Alright everyone, we start off today talking about Beijing Biden's weakness and how it's already beginning to have a drastic impact on world geopolitics. This, by the way, is something that I talked about, I think, only a couple of weeks ago, that this could potentially happen. Rather dystopian to have an Alzheimer's-ridden president, honk honk, at this time. First and foremost, though, there will be a pinned comment if you're watching this on YouTube with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. I make 2 videos a day now, just not on YouTube, so they're on all of those sites, but they won't actually be on YouTube, and that's because I cover edgy material that YouTube no longer wants you to talk about, like, chromosomes and various other things. Basically, anything related to news or politics. It's not extremely watered down. I'm surprised that they even still allow people to criticize Joe Biden and don't call it misinformation if you don't like the bastard. Anyway, Joe Biden is a weak leader. Not really a leader at all. And according to world diplomatic standards, I think a lot of people don't even consider him to be the president. They consider Kamala to sort of be the person they're supposed to be talking to, because they're like, well, he's pushing 79 at the moment. He's clearly out to lunch. I can't imagine that he makes many of his own decisions. His wife probably chooses the color of his underwear each day. Has to tie his tie for him. He's well dressed. If he were dressing himself, I think that he'd be half naked half the time. So really, they don't even really consider him to be a leader, let alone even a weak leader. What I think, therefore, is that this is going to be taken advantage of. I think it's pretty straightforward. And indeed, you see the first element of that here, which is that China and Russia have now announced a partnership. They're going to try to put an orbital platform or a base on the moon. The first nation, or nations, coalition, whatever, in partnership. The first group to successfully entrench a significant structure on the moon reaps huge benefits in many, many ways. The first is that if you were, and I warned about this, if you were to successfully, on the sly, weaponize a lunar base, you would essentially have a second strike capability and capable of being defended against, in the nuclear sense, potentially. You could send up tungsten rods. I know people talk about rods from God, from satellites and stuff. That's a little bit out there and wouldn't really be efficient anyway. It makes more sense to just use nukes. It's much easier. China and Russia both have a lot of them. By the way, they're much bigger than the ones that we field. They're just less accurate. If you successfully, though, have a joint Chinese-Russian lunar base, you could develop that. Number 2 is in terms of technology. If you wanted to, for instance, harvest asteroids or explore Mars or something, having a relay on the moon would really, really cut down on the relay time between your rover or whatever on Mars or Venus or some shit and Earth. It would boost that by a considerable amount. There could be resources as well on the moon that are capable of being extracted. If you end up with a base on the moon, let's say the other part is optical, I would say. It's sort of a symbol of the decline of the U.S. on the world stage due to Biden's bumbling. There were some people who claimed that it was going to be Trump's isolationism, as though not randomly bombing other countries made you weak. Now, Biden doesn't have any diplomatic leadership potential because people don't even fucking take him seriously. He doesn't even have the will of the populace. Despite all the push-pulling to the contrary, a lot of people still don't even believe he's legitimate. If that's the case, other countries are going to weaponize that fact in the diplomatic sense. The shock and awe factor of having the first lunar base not be an American one, I think, is terrifying. It's like, we already had a space race. And people were all up in arms when the Russians were the first to successfully put Sputnik up there and orbit the planet, and it started a space race. Now, we ended up winning the space race, in the general sense, through a very concerted effort. The government at the moment's not making any effort whatsoever, and you have India is developing a space program now. The United States is resting on its laurels, and we've done this in other ways too, in the postmodern era. Look at skyscrapers. We're no longer really part of the race to build big buildings anymore. Now, part of that is economic and efficiency related, but having the world's largest building, or having one of the top 10 largest buildings, is still, there's a wow factor to it that is sort of just optics. It helps with civic pride. Sometimes governance boils down to nothing more than appearances and facades. It's propaganda, quite literally. When you've got I can't even remember the name of it, that one massive-ass building in Dubai. When you've got these sort of structures going up, it's a symbol of power. It doesn't actually do much for you physically, but it gives you the ability to say, hey, look what we can do. That's basically what it is. Now, they're talking about two possibilities. One is an actual base, the other is an orbiting platform. It doesn't really matter, though. Establishing that first true permanent human presence on the moon is a symbol of the ability of the country to expand its horizons beyond what happens on Earth. The United States was at the forefront of this for decades. And competed with the Soviets, Soviet Union collapses, we started working with the Russians, actually, and now that's not really happening. The problem in modern geopolitics for Biden as well, especially with regards to, well, technically in regards to both countries, I'll explain both. The first problem is that the Democrats and Biden have spent the last half decade rambling about how Russia's responsible for all of their problems. Going to be kind of hard to then convince the public, especially their constituents, hey, we're going to work with the Russians on a space program. They probably don't want to. With China, if he buddies with them and says, hey, we're going to have a joint Chinese-U.S. complex as well, because of the perception of the other side of the aisle of him being Beijing Biden, which is true, but again, it's a perception technically speaking, unless you have hard evidence, it would look untoward. People would look askance to that, I think. I believe that the United States should up the ante. I think we should pour much more money and effort into our space program. I think the fact that Joe Biden is going after Elon Musk and harassing him through regulations is just shy of treason. I think other companies need to partner as well. If the U.S. government won't do it, then U.S. corporations will unfortunately be competing with foreign states at some point. The problem is that the idea, what happens, for example, Elon Musk says, oh, I can build a base up on the moon too. And then, some Chinese soldiers start harassing him. Well, what are you going to do there on the fucking moon? You need the U.S. government would have to get involved diplomatically, and it doesn't seem like Beijing Biden gives a fucking shit. He thinks he's a small mind. He's not capable of expanding his horizons beyond Earth. So he's playing 2D chess, and they're beginning to play 3D chess, ultimately. And a lot of it, again, is just optics and diplomacy, but there are huge resources out there in space. This is one planet that we're exploiting. If you could mine just one decent-sized asteroid and successfully bring it down to Earth, you'd have, more iron than is available in all of the crust of the Earth, probably, if it was large enough. Not sure how you'd bring it down without causing doomsday. That would be something for the scientists. Maybe they put it into orbit, and then you send up rockets and you mine them full of high-quality iron ore and then re-enter them and stuff. Tesla's trying to develop reusable rockets, so that could be a big help. Don't have to let them sink into the ocean every time and break up over someone's house. Can you imagine, like Elon Musk fires the missile wrong and it blows up and then a chunk of it lands in your backyard? If that happens, do you get to keep it? I know, wasn't there, there was some sort of a space station or satellite up there that the Russians had put up years ago that came down, and I think they were worried that it might come down in on someone's house or something. And it was really funny, and people were freaking out. It's like, well, there's probably radioactive materials on it, but it's not that large, so it's not going to cause a major problem. Might hit grandma. It might pull a Cuomo. But yeah, Biden is a weak leader, or not really a leader at all, and now we're reaping the rewards of people voting for a complete fucking turd. That's about all. Peace out.